Habari zenu ndugu zangu kote, na marafiki zangu. Nashukuru kushiriki na nyinyi kupitia kwa ukanda huu, na nataka tu niwakumbushe ya kwamba mwaka huu kama kanisa la Kristo la Pwani tunazingatia tunafuatilizia kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza chote kwa ujumla. So in each and every Sunday we are covering at least a chapter or two based on how the previous Sunday will have gone. So kuna vitu vingi sana ambavyo tunajifundisha from the book of First Corinthians from chapter 1 to chapter 6. Na hii Jumapili hii tutakuwa tunazingatia kitabu cha Wakorintho wa kwanza mlango wa 7, na kuna vitu vingi ambavyo tumejifundisha na kuanzia mlango wa 5 wa 6 na wa 7 there is something that is common in these three chapters, and these three chapters, what is observed as being common, what we observe to be common in these three chapters is the issue of sexual immorality. And so Paul is talking about sexual immorality being a problem in all these three chapters, something that is unwanted, something that corrupts our spirituality, kitu ambacho kinaondoa ule utakatifu wetu, something that distorts the intended image of God into our lives as Christians, something that is against sexual immorality is an activity, an action that corrupts our spirituality, an action that destroys our holiness and the holiness of God in us, and it is something that is contrary to the will of the Holy Spirit. And so it is one of the reasons as to why the devil gets a gateway. It is one of the things that prepares good grounds for the devil, for Satan to attack us, for Satan to possess us, and use us to propagate his own agendas, his own purposes, his own goals in this world. And so if that being the case, we need to stand firm, understand the concept of sexual immorality in depth as far as the scriptures are concerned, and then try to draw out the lessons that we learn from the scriptures, and then apply them in our lives so as to address this issue. And so tunajua ya kwamba sexual immorality comes as a result of temptation. This is something about the body, something that happens to the body. And our bodies, when you do the concept of the body from the theological perspective, you'll understand that the body belongs to God. This is according to chapter 6, verse 13 through 15. The body belongs to God, and it is not for sexual immorality, and God belongs also to our bodies, and our bodies are also the temple of God. So what does that mean? This means that our bodies are to remain pure. And so with regards to sexual immorality, then that means our bodies need to become pure. So there are three things that we are learning. Paul is trying to expose from the book of Corinthians, especially from chapter 5, chapter 6, and also chapter 7. One of the things that Paul is telling us about sexual immorality is that, first of all, according to chapter 5, he's saying that sexual immorality, for us to avoid sexual immorality, then it needs us to deassociate ourselves from the members of the church who are engaging themselves or involving themselves with sexual immorality. Because once we come close, once we feel comfortable staying close to those who practice sexual immorality, then it is likened to the yeast. You know, the yeast has a tendency, the work of the yeast is to make the whole dough to grow. Yani ile hamira, sijui tunaita hamira, unapoiweka kwenye ngano iko na tabia ya kuifanya ya kwamba ukiweka hamira kidogo ina tabia ya kufanya ngano inafanya nini? Inafura. So a little yeast, when it is put to that bowl, it makes bowl of dough, it makes it to grow. So that is the tendency That is what happens when we feel comfortable living or staying close, having that interaction with people who are sexually immoral, especially from the church. So it is very important for us to understand that one of the ways to address such kind of a spiritual challenge, the sexually immoral, is to make sure that we deassociate ourselves. So there is that deassociation. Why? Because a little yeast has a big effect on that dough of flour. Kwa hivyo ni lazima we deassociate ourselves if we are to address the issue of spiritual or the issue of sexual immorality. And then another thing that we need to another thing that addresses the issue of sexual immorality, it is about our bodies engaging directly into sexual immorality. So when we yield into the temptation to sexual immorality with our bodies, then that means automatically we become corrupt. The temple of God has become corrupt, and the Spirit no longer lives in our body, even though our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. But automatically the demonic spirits or the Satan spirit dwells in us, and the Holy Spirit departs. Why? Because our bodies have been contaminated. Our bodies are supposed to be sacred. If we are to live according to our call, then our bodies are supposed to be pure. Our bodies are supposed to be pure, free from any kind of spiritual stain. But if we involve ourselves directly, involve our bodies directly into sexual immorality, if we yield into sexual immorality, then that means our bodies have become contaminated. So another thing that will help us to address the issue of sexual immorality, and then it is for our bodies to remain pure. So in chapter 6, verse 13 through 20, it is talking about our bodies being for God and not for sexual immoralities. Our bodies belong to God, and God belongs to who? God belongs to us. So if our bodies belong to God, then in verse 20 is saying that since you were bought by a price, then serve God with your bodies. Worship God with your bodies. I'm just paraphrasing verse 20 of chapter 6. So that means that our bodies are purposed. The purpose of our bodies, it is to serve God only, and not to engage in sexual immorality, which corrupts what? And then all sin, talking about the sin, all sins that we do are out of the body. But the sin of sexual immorality is sinning against the body. It is something that has been done within the body. So that is how serious it is when we involve ourselves into sexual immorality. So we need to keep our bodies pure. And then another thing that will help us address the issue of sexual immorality, it is the institution of marriage. So according to chapter 7, marriage, if we engage into marriage, then that is one way of suppressing sexual immorality. We understand that sexual immorality comes as a result of temptation. When one yields into this kind of temptation, and especially when he is not married, because this temptation always comes when it is acute to those who are not engaged into marriage. It is severe. It comes strong to those who are not married. Why? Because they are single, and so they are not supposed to involve themselves in the passion of the body when they are not married. So when we yield into this kind of temptation, then that means our bodies will become corrupt. Our bodies will become corrupt. So Paul is trying to say that marriage is a field that was also meant to address the issue of sexual immorality. And so if we involve ourselves into marriage, if each and everyone gets his own partner, if each and everyone gets married to a husband or a wife, and that is a way to do what? To address sexual immorality. And then it is not just any kind of marriage that suppresses sexual immorality, that counters sexual immorality. It is the marriage that suppresses sexual immorality. It is the marriage that observes the details as expressed by Paul. So he's talking about conjugal rights. We have to understand about conjugal rights. If you are married, the Christian marriage, if you want to involve yourself into the Christian marriage with one of the purpose being to suppress sexual immorality, then you have to understand some things about conjugal rights, because you may be married but also find yourself still in sexual immorality. Why? Because maybe you've not understood the concept of the conjugal right. So there are details of the Christian marriage as far as avoiding sexual immorality is concerned. So we need to understand the details of the Christian marriage. So what kind of marriage is effective to counter sexual immorality? Those are the things that we also discuss. So in regards to that, we'll be talking about the conjugal rights, we'll be talking about the self-control, we'll also be talking about the concept of our bodies in marriage. So we'll be talking about the body, the purpose of the body as far as marriage and sexual immorality are concerned. So those are the things that we'll be talking about. And also we'll be looking at the severity of sexual immorality. How severe is sexual immorality before God's eyes? How does God view sexual immorality? What is God's world view on sexual immorality? How severe is it? And why are we supposed to avoid this? So we'll be looking at also other scriptures to see the theological view on the severity of the marriage of sexual immorality and why we are supposed to avoid it. So is sexual immorality today in our churches? Yes. Is this topic very important to us today? Yes. Are we supposed to, is it significant for us to understand some concept and a few things about sexual immorality with regards to 1 Corinthians chapter 7? 1 Corinthians chapter 7, yes. So I believe that this topic will be helpful to you, and if you follow us, you'll learn more about this. So sexual immorality is just the first part of, on the first part of 1 Corinthians chapter 7. But of course, there are a lot of things that we can learn in the other verses. So follow us, and I believe that you'll learn a lot and you will grow, and God will bless you. Thank you.